There is a moment every creative person knows. The moment when the room is full, but you feel alone. In the late 1990s, TLC stood at the absolute peak of success. Sold-out tours. #1 records. Awards that confirmed what the world already believed. From the outside, it looked perfect. But behind closed doors, one voice was growing quieter. Not because she had less to say, but because the system no longer knew where to place her. She was the visionary, the risk-taker, the one who challenged ideas before they became trends. And yet, she began to feel replaceable. Her name was Lisa Lopes. While the world celebrated TLC as a brand, she was questioning her own existence inside it. She was not afraid of failure. She was afraid of becoming invisible. What happens when success no longer feels like growth? When your ideas are welcomed only after someone else approves them? When the very thing that made you special becomes inconvenient? This is not a story about fame lost. It is a story about identity challenged. And to understand why she walked the path she did, we have to look past the headlines and into the silence she carried. Long before success complicated her identity, her world was already unstable. Lisa Lopes grew up learning how to read people before she learned how to trust them. As the oldest child in a household shaped by military discipline and emotional volatility, she became alert to every shift in tone, every unspoken threat, every silence that felt too heavy. Her father's presence was rigid and unpredictable. Authority came without warmth. Music existed in the home, but safety did not. That environment shaped her early. She spoke earlier than most children. She learned piano on her own. Creativity became both refuge and armor. When families moved frequently, roots never fully formed. Each new place required reinvention. Each goodbye trained her not to get too comfortable. Over time, this pattern created something deeper than resilience. It created restlessness. She did not just want to leave Philadelphia. She needed to. In North Philly, where tension lived on the sidewalks, she began to imagine a future that felt unreal even to her. Fame was not the goal. Escape was. Stability was. Control was. As conflicts at home escalated, she drifted between relatives, ran away, returned, and ran again. The cycle reinforced a belief she would carry for life. If you want peace, you have to build it yourself. By 17, she stopped waiting for permission. Atlanta was not glamorous when she arrived. She had no guarantees. No protection. What she had was instinct. An instinct told her this city was forming something new. In studios filled with raw ideas and unpolished ambition, she stood out not because she demanded attention, but because she refused to shrink. Her style confused people. Her intelligence unsettled them. She was not playing a role. When early conversations about forming a female group began, she was both essential and inconvenient. She brought depth, but not obedience. Vision, but not silence. That tension followed her into TLC. Even as the group's identity solidified, she felt the quiet pressure to adjust. To smooth edges. To simplify herself. To become easier to market. She never fully did. What the audience would later see as boldness began here as survival. As a refusal to disappear. As a mind that questioned structure before it accepted it. Before the world called her difficult. Before it called her controversial. She was simply a young woman trying to make sure her voice did not vanish inside someone else's vision. And as success approached, that fear would only grow louder. When success arrived, it came fast and loud. But for her, it never felt secure. As TLC rose through the early 90s, the industry focused on numbers. Singles climbing. Albums moving. Tours expanding. From the outside, the group looked unstoppable. Inside, the balance was fragile. She watched the brand grow faster than the people inside it. Decisions became strategic. Image mattered more than instinct. And slowly, the space for experimentation narrowed. For Lisa Lopes, creativity was not optional. It was oxygen. Yet the more successful the group became, the less room there was for risk. The debut album brought recognition. The style broke norms. The message connected deeply. But with every meeting, every negotiation, the unspoken message became clearer. Do what works. Do not disrupt the formula. She did not fear hard work. She feared stagnation. During the crazy sexy cool era, the group reached historic heights. The sound matured. The visuals softened. The success multiplied. Creep and Waterfalls dominated charts and airwaves, not just in America, but around the world. Yet inside her, something felt off. Her creative instincts pushed toward message and meaning, toward challenging listeners rather than comforting them. When songs conflicted with her values, she spoke up. When themes felt compromised, she resisted. Sometimes that resistance worked. Sometimes it isolated her. While audiences celebrated unity, she felt increasingly alone in rooms where decisions were made. The group needed stability. She needed evolution. And evolution made people nervous. As financial realities surfaced, frustration sharpened. Massive success had not translated into personal security. Contracts signed in youth now felt like cages. Knowledge arrived late, but once it did, it could not be ignored. She began studying ownership, publishing, control. What she learned frightened her more than fame ever had. The industry rewarded silence. And she was not built for that. As the group prepared to move forward, she questioned what forward meant. Did it mean repeating a sound that worked? Or did it mean growth, even if it was uncomfortable? To her, success without agency felt hollow. And so the cracks widened. Not because she wanted to leave, but because she refused to disappear inside something she helped create. The world saw a group at its peak. She felt a self slipping out of focus. And that internal conflict would soon move from tension to collision. Pressure does not always arrive as chaos. Sometimes it arrives as repetition. By the mid-90s, the momentum around TLC was relentless. Expectations were clear. Deliver hits. Maintain the image. Keep the machine moving. What the industry called stability, she experienced as confinement. For Lisa Lopes, the internal conflict was no longer quiet. Creativity, once her refuge, now felt negotiated. Ideas had to pass filters. Messages had to fit a tone. Growth had to wait. Outside the studio, her personal life mirrored that tension. Relationships became intense and unstable, fueled by jealousy, alcohol, and emotional volatility. Arguments escalated quickly. Boundaries blurred. What should have been private unfolded publicly, feeding a narrative she could no longer control. Then came the incident that crystallized everything. A moment of anger. A symbolic act. A fire that spread faster than intention. The destruction of a home was not just a legal event. It became a metaphor the public could not ignore. The headlines reduced her complexity to impulse. Recklessness replaced context. The story flattened. She did not run from it. She turned herself in. She faced the charges. She entered therapy in a halfway house. From the outside, it looked like a fall. From the inside, it felt like exposure. As the group continued working, the emotional distance widened. She contributed less, not because she had nothing to say, but because the space to say it had narrowed. When she disagreed with song choices or themes, the disagreement was no longer just creative. It was existential. Who gets to decide what this group stands for? Financial realities added another layer. Despite unprecedented success, money remained elusive. Contracts signed in trust revealed their consequences. The illusion of security collapsed. When the group publicly acknowledged their financial struggle, it sent shockwaves through the industry. For many, it confirmed what had long been suspected but rarely spoken. Success did not guarantee protection. For her, this was not simply about compensation. It was about agency. About being heard in rooms where decisions were made. About refusing to smile through imbalance. The pressure transformed her from collaborator to challenger. That shift came at a cost. Internal trust eroded. Public perception hardened. The label began to see unpredictability where she saw honesty. And slowly, the question that haunted her became unavoidable. Was there still room for who she was becoming? Or had the version of her the world loved already been decided? As the group moved forward, she stood at a crossroads. Not between fame and obscurity, but between self-expression and survival. And the path she chose would take her far from the system she no longer trusted. By the late 90s, the public story had hardened into labels. In America, TLC were celebrated as icons of empowerment. Their music filled radios. Their faces appeared on magazine covers. Their success was treated as proof that the system worked. But the system did not know how to explain her. When Lisa Lopes spoke about contracts, ownership, and control, the response was uneasy. These were not conversations the industry wanted on the front page. She was expected to perform gratitude, not analysis. Media narratives shifted subtly. She was described as difficult, unpredictable, too intense. Rarely was she framed as informed. When the group publicly revealed their financial reality, many Americans were stunned. The idea that artists selling millions of records could still be struggling forced an uncomfortable reckoning. For some viewers, it confirmed long-held suspicions about exploitation. For others, it was easier to believe there must be mismanagement or personal failure. She became the face of that discomfort. International audiences responded differently. Outside the United States, the business drama mattered less than the art. The music continued to chart. The visuals continued to influence fashion. To global fans, TLC represented boldness and freedom, not internal conflict. Her image abroad carried mystique rather than controversy. She was seen as unconventional, spiritual, ahead of her time. In places far from American tabloid culture, her questioning of power felt less threatening and more visionary. She was not challenging authority for attention. She was challenging it because she understood it. Back home, however, patience was thin. Endorsement opportunities faded. Corporate partnerships grew cautious. The industry began quietly preparing for a future that minimized unpredictability. And she felt it. The silence around her ideas grew louder than any argument. Meetings became shorter. Decisions were made elsewhere. What once felt like collaboration now felt like containment. Yet among fans who had lived long enough to understand compromise, her story resonated deeply. Older listeners recognized the pattern. Talent celebrated, then managed. Voice praised, then softened. Her refusal to soften became her defining trait. She was no longer just part of a successful group. She had become a mirror reflecting how success is controlled. And when the world did not know where to place her anymore, she began to step away, not in defeat, but in search of something more honest than applause. By the early 2000s, she was no longer chasing approval. She was searching for alignment. The noise of the industry had taught her what success could not give. And so she turned away from studios and stages, towards something slower and harder to explain. A spiritual path. A personal reckoning. Far from the spotlight, she spoke about healing. About cleansing. About starting over in ways money could not buy. For the first time in years, she seemed less interested in being understood and more focused on being at peace. But peace did not arrive gently. While traveling abroad, tragedy struck when a young child lost his life in an accident connected to her journey. The moment shook her deeply. She believed it carried meaning. Not punishment, but warning. A sign that her life was at a fragile turning point. Still, she did not retreat. She spoke about building something lasting. Land was purchased. Plans were made for a children's center. A future rooted in care, not performance. Then, without ceremony, the story ended. On a narrow road, in a place far from cameras and expectations, a sudden accident claimed her life. Of everyone in the vehicle, only one voice was silenced. Lisa Lopes was 30 years old. The world reacted with shock, but also with reflection. She was not remembered as easy. She was remembered as honest. In the years since, TLC has remained a pillar of American music history. Their songs still play at family gatherings, on long drives, and in moments that carry memory. and her presence still lingers. In every artist who asks about ownership before signing. In every woman who refuses to soften her truth for comfort. In every creative mind that understands success without selfhood is not enough. Her legacy is not defined by controversy. It is defined by courage. She challenged systems before the language existed to defend her. She lived openly in a world that rewards restraint. And she reminded us that some voices are not meant to be managed. They are meant to be heard. If this story brought back a moment, a song, or a feeling you had forgotten, share it below. And if stories like this matter to you, stay with us. Some journeys end early. But their meaning does not.